Lieutenant Sarah Chen walked into the massive chamber with her head held high. The room was huge, with seats arranged in a circle around a platform in the center. 12 different alien species sat in those seats, all looking down at her with eyes that showed no kindness. Some had multiple eyes. Some had no eyes at all but seemed to watch her anyway. The humans had tried 3 times to join the Galactic Federation. 3 times they had been told no. Each time the aliens gave the same reason. Humans were too weak, too primitive, too soft for the real dangers of space. Sarah stood on the platform and looked up at the alien faces. She had studied each species before coming here, the tall glass-like Vraxians who could live in temperatures that would melt steel. The rock people called Gorons who ate actual stones for breakfast. The energy beings known as Flux who existed as pure light and barely understood what physical matter was. Humans, spoke the Vraxian ambassador. His voice sounded like wind blowing through crystal caves. You come before us again, seeking membership. Again, we must ask why we should accept a species that cannot even survive their own planet's weather without clothing. Sarah's jaw tightened. Earth did have some tough weather, but humans had lived through ice ages and heat waves. They had built cities in deserts and on frozen mountains, but she did not say this. She was here to listen first. The Goron representative, a being that looked like a walking mountain, rumbled when he spoke. Your species breaks easily. Your bones are hollow like bird bones. Your skin tears at the smallest sharp edge. How can you explore dangerous worlds when you are made of such soft materials? A creature that looked like a tree with too many arms waved several branches at once. The Dendari have observed human behavior for 50 of your Earth years. You panic in small spaces. You need air to breathe every few seconds. You die if the temperature gets a little too hot or too cold. Most species can survive for days without air. You cannot survive for 4 minutes. Sarah felt her team behind her. Captain Rodriguez had told her to stay quiet and let the diplomats handle this. But Sarah was not just any lieutenant. She was an engineer. She fixed things that were broken, and right now she could see exactly what was broken here. The aliens were not wrong about human bodies being fragile, but they were completely wrong about what that meant. You want to test us, Sarah said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. You want proof that humans can survive in conditions that would challenge other species. The Vraxian ambassador leaned forward. His crystal body caught the light and split it into rainbow patterns. You think you understand the nature of survival, young human? I think you have been testing the wrong things, Sarah replied. You test how long someone can live without air, or how much heat they can take before they die. But surviving is not just about being tough, it is about solving problems. Behind her, she heard Captain Rodriguez whisper her name in warning. The diplomatic team had practiced for months. They had prepared careful speeches about human achievements and peaceful intentions. Sarah was supposed to stay quiet and look professional, but Sarah had not joined the military to stand quiet while people insulted her species. You want a real test? She asked, stepping forward. Give us your hardest survival challenge. Not your average challenge. Not something that killed a few people. Give us the challenge that everyone says is impossible. The chamber fell silent. Even the energy beings seemed to dim their glow as they considered her words. The Vraxian ambassador stood up. He was 12 feet tall and looked like a walking diamond sculpture. There is Kepler 442c, he said slowly. During its solar storm season, the surface reaches 800 degrees of your Fahrenheit measurement. The radiation levels have killed every species that attempted to survive there. The atmosphere contains toxic gases that burn through most breathing equipment. How long would we need to survive? Sarah asked. 1 hour, the ambassador replied. 1 hour on the surface during storm season. No shelter may be built beforehand. No equipment may be placed there ahead of time. You arrive with basic environmental gear and a timer. If you live for 1 hour, humanity will be granted full membership in the Federation. The other species began making noise. The Gorons rumbled like distant thunder. The tree people rustled their branches. The energy beings flickered and pulsed. Ambassador, the Dendari representative said, no species has ever survived 30 minutes on Kepler 442c during storm season. The Vraxians themselves have only managed 45 minutes, and your people are made of living crystal. Which is exactly why it is the perfect test, the Vraxian replied. If humans are truly worthy of Federation membership, they will find a way to survive what others cannot. Sarah felt her heart beating fast, but not from fear, from excitement. This was exactly the kind of problem she loved to solve. A problem that seemed impossible until you looked at it from the right angle. "I volunteer," she said immediately. "Lieutenant Chen, no." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "We need to discuss this with command. We need to analyze the conditions and prepare properly. The test begins immediately if accepted," the Vraxian said. "No preparation time. No additional equipment beyond standard environmental gear. Those are the conditions." Sarah turned to look at her team. She saw fear in their eyes, but also hope. They had come so far. Humanity needed this membership to survive in a galaxy full of hostile alien empires. The Federation was the only protection Earth had against species that saw humans as weak targets. "I accept the challenge," Sarah said, turning back to face the aliens. The Vraxian ambassador studied her for a long moment. "You understand that if you fail, humanity will be banned from requesting Federation membership for 100 Earth years?" "I understand. And you understand that failure means death? We cannot rescue you once the trial begins. The storm conditions make it impossible to send ships to the surface." "I understand." "Very well." The ambassador gestured to several technical beings who had been sitting quietly during the discussion. "Prepare the trial chamber. Equip the human with standard survival gear. Set the timer for 1 hour." As the aliens began moving to prepare the test, Sarah noticed something interesting. She had studied the atmospheric reports for dozens of worlds during her engineering training. Kepler 442c had a thin atmosphere, but it was not completely empty. The reports mentioned trace amounts of water vapor, nitrogen, and several other compounds. Most species would focus on the deadly heat and radiation. They would try to find shelter and hide until the timer ran out. They would treat it as an endurance test. But Sarah was an engineer. Engineers did not just endure problems. They solved them. As the technicians fitted her with a basic environmental suit and radiation monitors, Sarah was already working on the real challenge. Not how to survive for 1 hour, but how to turn a deadly planet into a place where she could actually accomplish something useful. The timer was set. The transport pod was ready. In 1 hour she would either be dead, or humanity would have a new home among the stars. Sarah Chen was ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do. The transport pod hit the surface of Kepler 442c with a crash that rattled Sarah's teeth. Red warning lights flashed inside her helmet as the external temperature readings climbed rapidly. 812 degrees Fahrenheit and rising. The radiation meter was already showing levels that would kill most species within 20 minutes. Through the pod's small window, Sarah could see the landscape of hell. Red rock stretched to the horizon, twisted into strange shapes by constant heat and wind. Lightning cracked across a yellow sky, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with deadly energy. This was what had killed every other species that tried the trial. Sarah's environmental suit immediately began working at maximum power. The cooling system hummed loudly as it fought against the terrible heat outside. Warning messages scrolled across her helmet display. Cooling system at 90% capacity. Battery power estimated at 45 minutes under current load. External suit temperature approaching critical levels. "Well," Sarah said to herself, "at least I know I have 45 minutes instead of 60. She opened the pod door and stepped onto the surface. The heat hit her like a physical blow, even through the suit's protection. Her boots sank slightly into rock that had been heated until it was almost soft. In the distance, she could see the twisted remains of previous trial attempts. Metal objects that had melted into strange shapes. Crystalline fragments from Vraxian suits that had failed to protect their wearers. Above her, she knew the Galactic Council was watching through orbital satellites. They were probably taking bets on how long she would last. The smart money was probably on 20 minutes, maybe 25 if she was lucky. Sarah activated her helmet's analysis system and began scanning the environment. The readings confirmed what she had suspected. The atmosphere was thin but not empty. Water vapor was present at low levels. Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and several other compounds existed in trace amounts. The air was hot and toxic, but it was still air. More importantly, Sarah's engineering eye was already seeing things that others had missed. The rock formations were not random. The constant wind and heat had carved them into specific shapes. Some created natural windbreaks, others channeled airflow in predictable patterns. The crashed remains of previous trials were not just debris. They were raw materials. "Time to get to work," Sarah said. She began walking across the surface, ignoring the temperature warnings that kept flashing in her helmet. Every few steps she stopped to examine something. A piece of melted metal that still retained some structural strength. A rock formation that provided shade from the worst of the overhead radiation. A depression in the ground where the geology created a slightly cooler microclimate. Sarah's suit was designed for survival, not construction work. But Sarah had grown up fixing farm equipment with whatever materials she could find. Her father had taught her that every problem was just a puzzle waiting to be solved with the right combination of available parts. She found what she was looking for about 200 meters from her landing site. A natural rock formation that created a partial shelter from wind and radiation. More importantly, the rocks were arranged in a way that would naturally channel airflow to create a cooling effect. It was basic physics. Hot air rises, cool air sinks, and moving air transfers heat more efficiently than still air. Perfect, Sarah said, and began stripping off pieces of her environmental suit. The move would have looked like suicide to anyone watching. Sarah's suit was the only thing keeping her alive in the deadly environment. But Sarah was not removing the important parts. She was taking off the backup power units, the emergency oxygen tanks, and the various tool attachments that came with standard exploration gear. Her primary life support was built into the suit's core systems. The backup equipment was useful for emergencies, but right now, Sarah needed building materials more than she needed redundant safety systems. Working quickly, Sarah began constructing a basic shelter. She used pieces of metal from previous failed attempts as a foundation. The backup power units from her suit became structural supports. Her emergency oxygen tanks, emptied of their contents, became water collection vessels. Because that was the key insight that other species had missed. Kepler 442c was hot, but it was not completely dry. The thin atmosphere contained water vapor. If you knew how to extract it, you could have all the water you needed. Sarah used the metal pieces to create a simple condensation system. Hot air came in one side, passed over metal surfaces that were cooled by airflow, and left behind small amounts of water as it condensed. It was the same principle that created dew on grass in the early morning, just engineered to work in extreme conditions. 20 minutes into the trial, Sarah had collected nearly a full cup of water. Her shelter was providing protection from the worst of the heat and radiation. Most importantly, she had identified enough raw materials to expand her construction project significantly. Up in orbit, the Galactic Council was beginning to take notice. "What is the human doing?" asked the Dendari representative. "She appears to be dismantling her own survival equipment." The Vraxian ambassador increased the magnification on their viewing screen. "She is building something. But what?" "It appears to be some kind of primitive shelter," rumbled the Goron observer. "Perhaps humans are more resourceful than we assumed." "Resourceful, yes," said another voice. "But the trial is far from over. The real test comes when her suit's power fails completely." Sarah, working on the planet's surface, was well aware of her time limitations. Her suit's main power was down to 30 minutes, but she was no longer depending entirely on the suit for survival. Her makeshift shelter was already reducing the external temperature by 40 degrees. Her water collection system was working steadily. Most importantly, she had identified the next phase of her project. Because Sarah Chen had not come to Kepler 442c just to survive for 1 hour. She had come to prove that humans could do more than just endure harsh conditions. They could thrive in them. She looked at the growing pile of materials she had collected, then at the natural rock formation that was providing the foundation for her construction project. In her mind, she could already see the completed structure. Not just a shelter, but something that would make the alien observers question everything they thought they knew about human limitations. 35 minutes to go, Sarah said, wiping sweat from her forehead despite the suit's cooling system. Time to show them what humans really do when things get tough. She picked up a piece of metal and began shaping it into something that looked remarkably like a sign. A sign that would announce the opening of something that had never existed on Kepler 442c before. Something that would change the way the galaxy thought about humans forever. 20 minutes into the trial, Sarah had accomplished something that made the watching aliens lean forward in their seats. She was not just surviving on Kepler 442c. She was building. Her basic shelter had grown into something much more complex. Using metal debris from previous failed trials and components from her own equipment, Sarah had constructed what looked like a small building. It had walls that channeled airflow for cooling, a roof that provided radiation shielding, and most surprisingly, what appeared to be a window facing outward. "Is she creating some kind of observation post?" asked the Flux representative, its energy form pulsing with curiosity. The Vraxian ambassador studied the readings from their orbital sensors. "The structure is actually reducing surface temperature in the immediate area by 60 degrees. "How is that possible?" Sarah, working steadily on the planet's surface, was applying basic engineering principles that her alien observers had never seen used in a survival situation. Every human engineer learned about heat transfer, air circulation, and thermal dynamics. Most species simply tried to resist harsh environments with brute force and superior technology. Humans learned to work with the environment instead of against it. She had positioned her building to take advantage of natural wind patterns. The hot surface winds entered through carefully placed openings, passed over metal surfaces that absorbed their heat, and exited through vents that created a circulation system. The heat energy that would have killed her was now being used to power her cooling system. But the most interesting part of Sarah's construction was still taking shape. The window she had built was not for observation. It was a service window. Sarah stepped back to examine her work. The building was about the size of a small garden shed, but it was built to serve a very specific purpose. One side had a counter-height opening with a flat surface that could hold objects. The interior had space for storage, food preparation, and most importantly, a working area where she could prepare beverages. "You have got to be kidding me," Sarah said to herself, then started laughing. She had built a coffee stand, not intentionally at first. She had been focused on creating an efficient cooling system and a place to store her growing collection of materials. But as the structure took shape, Sarah realized what it actually resembled. Every military base had them. Every construction site had them. Every place where people worked in difficult conditions had some version of the same thing. A small building where someone sold coffee, cold drinks, and snacks to people who needed them. "Well," Sarah said, "if I am going to build a coffee stand, I might as well do it right." She began working on the interior systems. Her water collection setup was already producing a steady supply of clean water through condensation. The building's cooling system kept the interior at a reasonable temperature. All she needed now was a way to heat and cool beverages in some kind of serving setup. The heating part was easy. Kepler 442c had more than enough heat available. Sarah rigged a simple system that used the external temperature to warm water in a metal container. For cooling, she used the same evaporation principles that powered her air conditioning system. Up in orbit, the alien observers were beginning to realize that something unprecedented was happening. "She has been on the surface for 25 minutes, reported the Goron representative. "Her suit's power systems should be failing, but her vital signs remain stable." "Because she is no longer depending entirely on her suit," the Vraxian ambassador said slowly. "She has created an artificial environment that supports her survival independently." The Dendari representative rustled its branches nervously. "But why is the structure designed with that opening? What is the purpose of the external counter?" None of the aliens had an answer for that question. In their experience, survival situations called for hiding, enduring, or fighting. They had never seen anyone respond to a deadly environment by building retail infrastructure. Sarah, working steadily in her improvised building, was putting the finishing touches on her project. She had found enough materials to create basic seating outside the service window. Large flat rocks served as tables. Smaller rocks became chairs. She even managed to create a simple awning that provided shade for customers who did not exist on a planet where no one could survive. During a trial that was designed to test whether she could stay alive for 1 hour. But Sarah had grown up in a military family. Her father had served in remote outposts where the closest civilization was hundreds of miles away. Her mother had run the base commissary and taught Sarah that morale was just as important as supplies. Good food and friendly service could make the difference between a successful mission and a failed one. Besides, Sarah was an engineer. Engineers did not just solve the problem they were given. They solved the problem behind the problem. The real challenge here was not surviving for 1 hour. The real challenge was proving that humans belonged in the Galactic Federation. And what better way to prove that than by turning the Federation's most impossible survival test into a business opportunity? Sarah used a flat piece of metal to create a sign. Working carefully with a sharp rock, she scratched words into the surface in several different languages. Galactic Standard, Vraxian crystal script, Goron stone marks, and Dendari branch patterns. The sign read, Chen's Thermal Cafe, cold drinks available, grand opening today. She mounted the sign above her service window and stepped back to admire her work. The coffee stand was complete. It had a working kitchen area, customer seating, proper signage, and a menu board where she could list daily specials. All it needed now was customers. Sarah checked her timer. 35 minutes remaining. Her suit's power was down to backup levels, but her building's environmental systems were working perfectly. She felt better than she had since arriving on the planet. Time to open for business. Sarah took her position behind the service counter and began her opening routine. She arranged her limited supplies neatly. She filled several containers with cool, fresh water from her condensation system. She prepared a batch of improvised, iced coffee using water heated by the planet's surface, temperature, and cooled by her evaporation system. Then, she did something that made every alien observer stare in complete bewilderment. She began calling out to attract, customers. Welcome to Chen's Thermal Cafe, Sarah announced loudly. We are now open for business. Cold drinks available. Beat the heat with our signature planetary cooling beverages. Her voice echoed across the empty, deadly landscape. There was no one to hear her except the orbital sensors that were recording every word. But Sarah continued her sales pitch anyway, because she was proving a point that went far beyond simple survival. Humans did not just endure harsh conditions. They opened businesses in them. 30 minutes into the trial, Sarah Chen was not just alive on Kepler 442c. She was officially open for business. Her coffee stand was complete and fully operational. The interior temperature had stabilized at a comfortable 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Her water collection system was producing nearly a gallon per hour of clean, fresh water. Most importantly, her improvised cooling system was working so well that she could actually serve iced drinks in an environment where most species would die of heat stroke in minutes. Sarah stood behind her service counter, wearing her partially dismantled environmental suit like a work uniform. She had arranged her supplies with the precision of someone who had worked in food service before. Clean containers for water, a metal pot for heating beverages, several cups made from salvaged equipment pieces, even a small bowl that served as a tip jar. Good morning and welcome to Chen's Thermal Cafe, Sarah called out cheerfully to the empty landscape. We are proud to be Kepler 442c's first and finest beverage establishment. Today's special is our signature planetary cooling tea, made with fresh condensed water and cooled using our patented heat exchange system. In orbit above, the Galactic Council was watching in complete silence. No one had ever seen anything like this in the history of the survival trials. She is treating this like a normal business day, whispered the Dendari representative, on a planet that has killed dozens of trained explorers. The Vraxian ambassador was studying the readings from their sensors. Her vital signs are completely stable. Better than stable, actually. Her stress levels are lower now than they were when she first arrived. Because she is doing something she enjoys, rumbled the Goron observer. Humans appear to find satisfaction in providing services to others, even when no others are present. The Flux representative pulsed brightly. But why? What is the evolutionary advantage of pretending to serve customers that do not exist? None of them understood what they were seeing because none of their species had developed the same relationship with commerce and hospitality that humans had. For most alien civilizations, business was purely functional. You traded resources because you needed them. You provided services because it was efficient. Humans had turned commerce into something else entirely. They had made it social, creative, and sometimes even artistic. A good human bartender was part chemist, part psychologist, and part entertainer. A skilled human shopkeeper could make customers feel welcome, valued, and happy even when selling the most ordinary products. Sarah was demonstrating all of these skills on a planet where no customers could possibly exist. Our water is sourced from the finest atmospheric condensation systems, Sarah continued, polishing a metal cup with a piece of cloth. Filtered through natural rock formations and cooled to the perfect temperature for your refreshment needs. She moved around her small workspace with practiced efficiency, preparing drinks that no one would order and arranging displays that no one would see, but her movements had purpose and precision. Every action was designed to create the best possible customer experience. Sarah checked her timer. 25 minutes remaining. right on schedule for the next phase of her plan. She stepped outside her coffee stand and began setting up outdoor seating. Using flat rocks as tables and smaller stones as chairs, she created a small cafe area in front of her service window. She even managed to construct a simple umbrella from metal scraps and fabric pieces, providing shade for customers who would never come. We also offer outdoor seating for those who prefer to enjoy their beverages, with a view of our unique geological features, Sarah announced. Please note that all seating areas are equipped with radiation shielding for your safety and comfort. This was not entirely true. The radiation levels were still dangerous by most species standards. But Sarah's building design had created a microenvironment where the radiation was reduced to survivable levels. Someone could actually sit at her outdoor tables for a short time without dying. The alien observers were beginning to understand that they were witnessing something historic, not just the first successful completion of the Kepler 442c trial, but a fundamental demonstration of how humans approached impossible situations. She has turned a survival test into a customer service demonstration, the Vraxian ambassador said slowly. She is not just proving that humans can survive harsh conditions. She is proving that they can create comfortable conditions for others. Sarah returned to her position behind the counter and began preparing her first official beverage of the day. She heated water using the planet's surface temperature, added some improvised flavoring from minerals she had found in the rocks, and cooled the mixture using her evaporation system. The result was something that actually tasted quite good. One Kepler special, fresh and ready, Sarah announced, setting the drink on her counter. Made with locally sourced materials and prepared according to traditional human hospitality standards? She took a small sip of her creation and nodded approvingly. Not bad for something made on a planet that was supposed to kill her. Sarah looked around at her small establishment. The coffee stand was solid and functional. The seating area was comfortable and welcoming. Her supplies were organized and ready for business. All she needed now was her first customer. And then, impossibly, she got one. A small mechanical device came rolling across the rocky landscape toward her stand. It was about the size of a coffee can, with wheels for moving and various sensors for navigation. Sarah recognized it as a maintenance drone, probably sent by the Galactic Council to monitor the trial conditions. The drone approached her outdoor seating area and stopped, its sensors scanning the tables and chairs. Then it rolled closer to the service window and extended a small manipulator arm toward the counter. Sarah stared at the drone for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Well, hello there," she said warmly. "Welcome to Chen's Thermal Cafe. You are our very first customer. What can I get for you today?" The drone was not programmed for conversation, but its sensors were detecting the cooler temperature around Sarah's stand. Its internal systems were probably registering the reduced radiation levels and improved atmospheric conditions. "You know what?" Sarah said. "The first drink is on the house. Customer service policy." She prepared a small amount of cool water in a shallow metal dish and placed it near the drone's access ports. Many maintenance machines used water for cooling their internal systems. This one might actually benefit from a small amount of fresh, clean liquid. The drone's sensors examined the offering for several seconds. Then slowly it extended a thin tube and began absorbing the water into its cooling system. "Excellent choice," Sarah said, beaming with genuine pleasure. "That is our signature cooling blend, perfect for mechanical systems operating in extreme environments." Up in orbit, the Galactic Council was witnessing something that none of them had thought possible. A human was providing customer service to a maintenance drone on the most hostile planet in their testing system, and both the human and the drone seemed to be enjoying the experience. 10 minutes remained on Sarah's timer, and she was having the time of her life. Her first customer, the maintenance drone, had finished its cooling system refresh and was now sitting at one of her outdoor tables. The little machine had not been programmed for social interaction, but something in its basic learning algorithms seemed to recognize that this was a pleasant place to be. Its sensors registered the cooler temperature, the reduced radiation, and the friendly atmosphere that Sarah had created. "How was everything today?" Sarah asked the drone, wiping down her counter with a piece of cloth. "Your first visit to our establishment?" The drone could not answer, but its optical sensors focused on her face. Its programming was simple, designed only for monitoring and maintenance tasks. But it had learned to recognize patterns. and the patterns here were unlike anything in its memory banks. Hostile environment, confirmed. Temperature reduction, significant. Human survival, unexpected. Human behavior, impossible to categorize. Well, I hope you will come back soon, Sarah continued. We are planning to expand our menu once we get more supplies. Maybe add some local mineral water varieties or some thermal heated soups for the colder seasons. She reached under her counter and pulled out a small metal card she had made from scrap materials. Using a sharp rock, she had scratched numbers and letters onto its surface. Here is your frequent customer card, Sarah said, offering it to the drone. Buy 9 drinks and get the 10th one free. Good for 1 full galactic year. The drone extended a small manipulator arm and accepted the card. Its sensors scanned the markings, recorded the information, and filed it under a new category it created called Unexpected Social Interactions. Up in orbit, the Galactic Council was watching this exchange with growing amazement. She made a loyalty program, the Dendari representative said quietly, for a maintenance drone, on a planet where no one is supposed to survive. The Vraxian ambassador was studying readings that seemed impossible. The human stress levels are actually lower now than when she started the trial. Her heart rate is calm. Her brain activity shows patterns associated with satisfaction and accomplishment. Because she is succeeding at something she values, rumbled the Goron observer. She is not just surviving. She is providing good service to a customer. Even if that customer is a simple machine, the Flux representative pulsed thoughtfully. We have been testing survival ability. But this human has demonstrated something far more significant. She has shown the ability to create civilized conditions in uncivilized places. Sarah checked her timer. 5 minutes remaining. Time to close up shop and prepare for the end of the trial. But first, she had some important business to complete. She prepared a small tip jar and placed it on the counter next to her customer service bell. Then she created a simple receipt for the drone's purchase and filed it in her improvised cash register. Finally, she posted a small sign in the window listing her operating hours. Chen's Thermal Cafe will be open tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Galactic Standard Time, Sarah announced. We look forward to serving all your beverage needs in a comfortable, climate-controlled environment. The maintenance drone processed this information and filed it in its memory banks. According to its programming, it was supposed to return to the orbital station when its monitoring duties were complete, but its learning algorithms had identified this location as beneficial for its operational efficiency. It would recommend that future monitoring missions include a stop at these coordinates. Sarah began cleaning her equipment and organizing her supplies, not because the trial was ending, but because proper closing procedures were important for any food service establishment. She wanted to leave everything ready for the next day's business. It has been a pleasure serving you today, Sarah told the drone. Please tell your friends about us. We offer group discounts for maintenance crews and survey teams. The drone recorded this message in its social interaction files, then slowly rolled away from the cafe area. But it stopped at the edge of the radiation-free zone and turned back to look at the small building. Its sensors registered the comfortable environment, the friendly service, and the strange satisfaction it had experienced during its visit. Then, in a behavior that was not part of its original programming, the drone sent a brief data burst to its orbital controllers. The message contained detailed environmental readings, efficiency reports, and something new, a recommendation for future operations in this area. Sarah watched the little machine leave and felt genuinely sad to see her first customer go. But she was proud of what she had accomplished. In less than an hour, she had not only survived on Kepler 442c, she had created the planet's first successful business. Her timer showed 2 minutes remaining. Sarah used the time to post a small sign on her door. Thank you for visiting Chen's Thermal Cafe. We appreciate your business and look forward to serving you again soon. Then she sat down at one of her own outdoor tables and enjoyed a cold drink while watching the alien sunrise. The landscape was still deadly and hostile, but her small corner of it had become something else, something welcoming and civilized. The timer reached 0. Above her, the transport pod appeared to take her back to the orbital station. But Sarah was not quite ready to leave. She had one more thing to do. She went back inside her coffee stand and left a small metal box on the counter. Inside the box was the tip money she had collected from herself during the day, along with a note written on a piece of metal. For the next human who visits this planet, The note read, "The cafe is yours now. Take care of it and it will take care of you. Also, the drone likes his water at room temperature. Good customer. Always tips well." As Sarah climbed into the transport pod, she looked back at her small establishment one last time. The building was solid and well constructed. It would survive the planetary storms and continue providing shelter for anyone who needed it. The water collection system would keep producing fresh water. The cooling system would keep the interior comfortable. Chen's thermal cafe was now a permanent part of Kepler 442c. Back in the orbital station, Sarah stood before the Galactic Council once again. The alien representatives were quiet, studying her with new understanding. "Lieutenant Chen," the Vraxian ambassador said finally, "you have completed the trial. You survived 1 hour on Kepler 442c during storm season." "Thank you, Ambassador. It was an interesting experience." "Interesting," the Goron representative repeated slowly. "You built a business establishment. You served refreshments to a maintenance drone. You created an environment where others could survive comfortably. You did not just pass our test," the Dendari said, branches rustling with amazement. "You turned our test into a customer service opportunity." The Flux representative pulsed brightly. "We have tested survival ability for thousands of years. No species has ever responded to our trials by opening a cafe." Sarah smiled. "Humans do not just survive harsh conditions, Ambassador. We make them better. We turn problems into opportunities. We build communities in impossible places, and we always provide good customer service." The Vraxian ambassador stood slowly, his crystal form catching the light. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Humanity is granted full membership in the Federation, effective immediately." He paused, studying Sarah with something that might have been respect. "Furthermore, Lieutenant Sarah Chen is hereby appointed as the first human ambassador of extreme environment commerce. It appears we have much to learn from your species about turning survival into success." Sarah nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. I look forward to working with you. And if you are ever in the Kepler 442c system, please stop by Chen's Thermal Cafe. We are always open for business."